I think one of the best, least talked about stories of the year for Carolina football, and honestly not just Carolina football, but ACC football, is what's happening with Jacolby Criswell playing quarterback for North Carolina and the job he's done stepping in under tough circumstances. And luckily, you don't have to hear us talk about it because Jacolby's here. He can talk about it himself.
Talk about it.
Yes, sir.
Jacolby, thanks so much for coming by.
Yes, sir. Thank y'all. I appreciate it.
How's life in Chapel Hill as the starting quarterback of a winning football team?
Honestly, I love it. I mean, it's what you dreamed of as a little kid. Kind of didn't go the way I planned the first time I was here, but luckily God decided to bring me back, and I got my opportunity, and I'm loving every single bit of it.
Okay, I think if people have been following the team closely, they have heard the story of what all went down this offseason as far as, of course, Jacolby had been here, went to Arkansas in his home state, and elected to come back. But let's hear from your point of view. Kind of take us through what happened and why Carolina was ultimately where you wanted to end things up.
Yes, sir. Great question. I left 3 years in, been here, and decided to go home. I just thought I saw what Drake was doing with his home state, and as a football player, you want to do the same thing, and I decided to go back home. I was closer to my family, got to see my little siblings grow up, thought that was the place for me, and I made that decision without relying on God with that decision, and I was there. I wouldn't say I was miserable, but it wasn't the football like I'm used to, and decided to enter the transfer portal again, and luckily God brought me back here, and I'm excited. I just love this place so much. I love the culture. I love what Coach Brown does, and love the players, and after that, it was a done deal, and whenever I got here, I kind of knew where I was, and obviously you don't want to see another quarterback go down the way that Max went down, but when your number's called, you got to go out there and perform.
I would have to think that it wasn't an easy phone call to make back to Carolina. I mean, there has to be like a little bit of awkwardness there, or just some hesitation. What was that moment like for you? How did all that kind of go down?
Kind of funny. So me and Kobe Pacehour were texting at the time, and he was like, "Yeah, what about you coming back?" We just kind of laughed about it. He was like, "I'm serious," and
Jacolby, I'm not joking. I'm serious about this.
And I was like, "Yeah, I would love to, 100%." And that's kind of how it all started. And I talked to my parents about it, and they were like, "You know, you left there." And I was like, "I do." And I was like, "I think this is where God wants me to be, honestly." And I think I wasn't supposed to leave the first time. I think I just made a decision that a young man makes. He made a mistake without really relying on other people, including God, to really rally around a big thing like that, because that's a big change and move. And after it all happened, I wasn't really shocked. I had to win some of the guys over, win the locker room over, just because when someone leaves, it's really rare that someone comes back and people accept them. And so grateful that they did. And after that, it's just been a great time here.
What happened to change your perspective on the decision-making process? Because that's not an easy thing to realize, that, you know what, I might not have done this the right way, but I feel like I've got a better outlook on it now.
Yes, sir. It was just based off where I felt comfortable with, and I was comfortable here, and I loved every single thing about it here. This is what college football, I love the way Coach Brown really kind of keeps the tradition the same way of college football after everything that has been changing. He's really a coach that's old school, and my dad was my high school coach, so he's the same way. He told me how college football was going to be, and that's just what I grew up on. And after that, the change wasn't too much of a difference. I just, like I say all the time, I just love this place, and I just felt like this is where God wanted me to be at.
Had you pushed all the Carolina stuff to the back of the closet?
Not quite.
I still had a couple of those dry fits.
Well, the color's so good. I mean, it had to feel good. Be like, I do look good in this color.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. My mom actually mentioned it whenever she came down this weekend. She was like, yeah, at first I kind of pushed some clothes away, but after a while the decision, I had to hurry up and get it all back. And so
honey, go up in the attic. We got to get those Tar Heel shirts back. You mentioned kind of winning over the locker room again. How do you do that? Do you do that with your play? Do you do that with your personality? I'm sure there were some guys, you mentioned Kobe, I think you and John Copenhaver maybe are a good friend. But how did you kind of establish that back with some guys that maybe you didn't know as well?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of hard because a lot of guys didn't really understand the situation on why I left. And it was me just being straight up honest with them. Like, I made a dumb decision to where I just didn't know what to do, and I decided to leave. And I just ended up just obviously the whole football aspect of it showed them my skills, what I'm capable of. But it's also just hanging around all the guys and making sure they understand me and I understand them. And I think they figured out like, okay, he's a genuine person and he made a mistake of leaving the first time and he's staying here and he's riding it out with us.
Okay, two things. One, you're being very hard on yourself for your decision to leave. Like, don't you think I think most people understood what was happening there. So let me just say that first and foremost. Second of all, like we've seen it. Jacolby Criswell is clearly good enough to be a starting quarterback at a Power 4 school. So what was it like for you to not get that opportunity behind some very good players, as we understand? But I have to imagine at some point that was pretty frustrating.
Yes, sir. It was frustrating for sure. I mean, Sam, his freshman year, he balled out, and I knew where I stood from there. So best thing for me was just to learn from him. And at the time, Drake was committed at Alabama. They told me, like, hey, we're going to try and get Drake to flip, and they ended up doing that. And they were like, are you okay with that? And I was like, yes, sir. I want to compete. Like I don't ever want anything handed to me. And so he ended up coming. I learned from him, and he ended up getting a starting job. And obviously, I was as a guy that's competing, you lose because you're so competitive. You're kind of down a little bit. And at the end of the day, I just looked at it like an opportunity to learn from another guy and also to help him out because I've seen Sam play. I've seen a lot of defensive things that he probably hasn't seen, and so I was able to help him be an older guy in that QB room for him. And so I was really grateful for that, looking back at it. And it was super hard, though. You just kind of wonder, like, okay, what's next for me after you lose a job, knowing he's going to be here for a couple of years, and you just don't want to waste your talent that God has given you. And that was just tough. And like I said, it just had a lot to do with me leaving. And I just saw what he did. Great young man, great player. And, he just balled out, and I just knew, like, okay, he's not giving this thing back. Like, so that's what it came up to.
Well, I also think people kind of underestimate. I don't want to talk about anybody else, but I'm certain there were other teams promising you things this summer in situations that were more conducive to being a starting quarterback than the one at North Carolina where you had two guys in front of you from day one. That's a difficult spot to walk into, much less starting from behind and not going through spring practice. So how'd you do some of the technical stuff, like basically learning a new offensive language? How did you accelerate that progress so that you would be ready if your time did come?
Yes, sir. So whenever I left Arkansas, I wasn't able to officially compete with be with the whole team yet because I wasn't graduated yet, and so it was more of me. Okay, this is a time where I actually sit down and sit down with the coaches and learn a new playbook. A lot of the things were similar, but his terminology was different from what I was used to. So I had to really tone into that and understand okay, even though some of the plays are the same, it's his offense, and I have to learn how he reads it compared to how Coach Longo read it at the time. And so that was really something I had to get used to, and I just grinded with that. And the receivers helped me out, the O-line helped me out, and they got me on board to where I was able to learn as quickly as I did, even though I wasn't going to play immediately. But in the back of my head, I was like, I think one day I'm going to get my chance. I just have to be ready.
What was it like for you? That Max's injury was difficult just to see and for everybody. You hate it for him individually. But then all of a sudden you go from somebody who I think at that moment was basically told, hey, get ready for spring and we'll compete for the open or the starting job then, to, hey, maybe accelerate that that progress a little bit. What was that time period like as you tried to get up to speed to potentially be a guy who was out there playing?
Oh, yes, sir. So after he went down, we just after the game, the Minnesota game, Coach Lindsey was like, just be ready. He was like, you don't know when your time's going to come, but just be ready. He was like, I really want you to focus on everything. I know it came quick, but you just have to be ready. And so for me, right after that game, I went right back into the playbook, immediately just grinded because I never knew. I didn't know exactly what was going to happen.
Sure.
Didn't know what he meant by the statement, but, I had to be ready. And so after the Central game and we both split reps, then after that I kind of figured okay, this is my shot. So after that game he was like, okay, we're going to we're going to get you going.
Sure.
So after that, it was just me just dialing down on what he wanted. Whenever he called a play, why did he call this play? Things of that nature. And I was ready immediately. I had to kick some rocks from the first 3 or 4 games. But after that, I felt like, okay, I was back in my groove.
Where do you feel like you're more comfortable when you're standing back there waiting on the snap now in mid-November than you were even maybe at the first part of October?
I'd say I was a little bit anxious, you know. I mean, obviously didn't get as many reps as it was in fall camp to where I understood the O-line, and it was like I didn't know exactly what I was going to get. But after a while, I figured that out. I was like, okay, this O-line is really, really good. Let me lean on those guys and trust myself as well. And so after the first couple games, it was like, okay, I'm just rushing a lot of things, not really doing what I'm supposed to be doing, trying to make a play when nothing's there, and those rookie mistakes. And after a while, it was like, okay, let me just zone into the type of player I am. Don't do anything different.
All right, I know this is going to sound like an excuse, and I don't mean it to sound like an excuse, but that James Madison game. So, like, you have the backup center going, who hadn't been center before and was a transfer from D3 level. Just about anything that could go wrong team-wise went wrong. Block kick for – like, what was this game like for you? Because they're blitzing every single play because you know you got an inexperienced center and a guy making his first start. They're putting up – I mean, you guys scored 50 and lost the game. So just take us through that game and maybe the speed at which things were moving for you and what all was happening in that particular contest.
Oh, yes, sir. We kind of knew James Madison would kind of blitz us quite a bit.
Yeah.
And for me, I had to be spot on with my protections, and I really wasn't that game. It was like I was trying to figure out ways to get the ball out quick because I saw it coming.
Sure.
But they just came a step faster, and that's just me having to be used to the game speed of it all. Because in my mind, it's slow, but when you're actually on the field, it's a lot faster than you expect. And so they just did a really good job mixing in blitzes, and for that, it was just seemed like the game was just in my head. It was going really, really fast, and I wasn't really settling in with the game. Like the game wasn't slow to me then, and so that was probably the hardest part for that game for me to adjust to. But moving forward, that's when the game just got a lot slower. I saw everything coming, and so I wish I could. Obviously, you wish you can go back to that game, change a couple things, but you can't. But if I could, I mean, just make sure the game comes to me, not me coming to the game.
Are you related to the May brothers?
Yeah, the amount of yes sirs, I'm impressed.
Yes sirs and like accountability is like at a May brother level, which is a high compliment. When the game does slow down, what kind of things do you see that maybe you didn't see before?
I see pre-snap reads a lot quicker, pre-snap things to where, okay, I know what they're trying to do here. They're trying to disguise it, but I know what they're going to get to at the end of the play. And it's just, okay, where can I get the ball out quick? And that's something I really gotten better at. But I'd say last game, I kind of took a step back, really didn't do that. And I kind of let the team down in that way, which, I mean, I just have to be better because it's unacceptable. But me just being faster, me seeing exactly what they want to do, what they see on film, what they think our weaknesses is, and kind of prove to those guys, like, okay, I see what you're trying to do, but we're pretty good at this too.
Where do you find the balance? Because it feels like you've used your legs more effectively here over the last 3 or 4 games. Where do you find that balance of staying aggressive in the pass game, trying to make plays down the field, but knowing when the right time is to use your legs?
Yes, sir. I think Wake did a really good job of that, honestly, to where they kind of clamped everything down on the passing game to where sometimes my checkdowns weren't open. Mm-hmm. So it's like, oh, I have to use my feet. And whenever it's third down, that's when the timer in my head is, okay, maybe they can bring a blitz here. And if my check isn't out, then I have to use my feet. And I think I've been doing a really good job of just utilizing my check downs and my feet on third downs, making sure we're able to continue drives.
Has there been a time in the last couple months where you've had that feeling that, you know what, I'm in the right place, and just have that peace for somebody who's moved around some to feel like whether I'm playing or not, like this is where I want to be every single day? Have you had that moment?
Yes, sir, I have. I mean, like I always say, I just love this place. Like everybody that's been here, it's a family. That's one thing. I'm a big family person. And this place is a place I want to stay at for as long as I can. And obviously I have one more year left, so that can't be that long. But when I'm done with my football career, hopefully it's still here one day. And, I mean, to any advice to anybody else to whether or not like you don't know exactly where your home is playing college football. It's all about the environment, you know, all about family. Like, you don't want to go to a program where it's just you're another player. You're another player where obviously it's a business, but to them it's like, okay, we want you to perform. That's all we want for you. And I think that's where college football is getting to the point to where no connections are actually being made. And here they just want to get to know you as a person and develop you as a football player. And that's just something I really, really like about this program.
How do you know when that's real?
You know it's real whenever – I mean, my example, whenever they tell you can come back, I mean, that just tells you, like, okay, we know what type of human being he is. He's a guy that's genuine. He's not going to lie to us. He's going to make – I'm a leader. And so I think they figured out, regardless of if I play, I can have a role as just being a leader for the guys. And that was kind of my role here when I first got here, and just to kind of bring that spirit back to them, things in that nature and things like that.
You mentioned family. You had a unique upbringing. The family that you consider your mom, dad, siblings are not your biological family. Take us a little bit through that journey and what I'm sure was not an easy upbringing.
Yes, sir. So my real family, there's probably I think there's around 11 or 12 of us sibling-wise, and we all kind of got separated at a very young age. And I have one real brother. His name's Jacolby Criswell. He's been with me for pretty much my whole entire life. Like, that's my hero. And he's a guy that at the time I had to make, as a little brother, I had to make the tough decisions because he was more of a quiet guy. And I knew we didn't want to go through a route to where we weren't our full potential. And at the time he was older, he was in middle school, and I was still in, I think I was in 3rd or 4th grade at the time. And he was up there with my coach, who is now my dad and so he kind of got to know him through football, and it just kind of happened. They understood our situation to where we're living with my grandma, some friends, some cousins, things of that nature. And he was like, hey, y'all want to stay with us one time? And so we're like, oh, yeah, let's do it. That one time happened to be like 2 weeks, and my real dad ended up coming back, and he was like, hey, y'all want to stay with us? So we did. And things weren't really quite there with it all. And so I ended up calling him back, and I was like, hey, some things happened. Can we come stay with y'all again? So after a while, that again ended up being for like a month. And so my dad, funny story, my dad asked my 2 little sisters, Aller and Palmer Watson, he was like, hey, what do y'all think about Kobe and Tori staying with us? My oldest sister was like, yeah, let's do it. My younger sister, who's just like me, she's like, where are they going to sleep?
These are important questions.
My dad was like, I think they're going to sleep in your room. She was like, okay, give me a second to think about it. So we stayed that night, and that morning she wakes us up at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. We played dolls with her for like 2 hours. And so we're all watching TV. She goes, Dad, yeah, they can stay here. And so after that, I mean, it's just been a blast. And it's kind of like here. It's like you don't have to be blood to be family, and that's something I really rely on. And a lot of my closest people aren't blood related to me, and that's just something I really cherish.
If you hadn't played dolls, things could have gone a little different.
That's right. What a key decision, but Jacolby back in the day.
100%.
Moving around like that has got to be tough for a little kid. Like, that's the one thing you're supposed to have that you're not supposed to have to worry about. What do you remember about that time, and did it make sense to you?
It didn't, honestly. And honestly, I just had really good friends to where they were always going to church, and they always made sure I stayed out of trouble. I was always going to church with them. So I really relied on my faith. There's been countless nights to where I would just cry, like wondering, why is this happening to me at such a very young age? And I was always in my books, always doing school, always in reading the Bible, and I'm just handed everything to God. And I mean, it didn't happen when I wanted to where I met my family, but when I did, I made sure like I'm giving them the world for doing what they did.
When did you feel like, you know what, that's my family, that's the people that love me right there?
It took me a while. My mom still tells me to this day, it took me and my brother probably about 5 months of living with them till we actually opened up. And because I never knew what a family felt like, so it was really hard for me to like understand, like, okay, what are they doing, like things of that nature. And after a while, just hanging out with them and seeing that, okay, they're doing everything for us, and obviously as kids you can't do much for them, so that says a lot that if someone's doing so much for you and you can't do much for them, they really care about you. And then plus my younger siblings, Adler and Palmer Watson, those two little girls are literally my heart, and I do anything for them. And they stood by my side even though they didn't quite understand what was going on. They treated us like we were family from the day we moved in.
Do you ever think like there's something? This is gonna be a weird question. I understand that. Do you ever think that there's like this guy right here has had some really hard things happen, but for some reason it comes back to the right thing in the end? It just seems like that there's been some circumstances for you like that, or it's like the journey hadn't been easy, but the end result seems to be pretty good.
Yes, sir. I mean, it's been like that for obviously my family situation and football.
Yeah.
And it seems like it reoccurred again. At the time when I left, it seemed like, okay, why is this not? Why am I not starting? What's happening?
Yeah.
And so I really had to rely on really being back in that connection with him, because I can say sometimes as a young teenager you kind of steer away from things. The college life kind of takes you away from how you were grown up to be, and that happened for a little bit, and I just really had to rely on him again and realize like, okay, I want this, but what he wants from me may be something different. So I really had to take a step back and really rely on him and put my goals to the side and say, God, what do you want for me? And I think his timing's always the right timing, and I'm back here. I have a great family. So I think everything that has happened for me is because of him.
How do you think that impacts kind of your balance on the football field? I mean, if you fumble the ball on an RPO, it's not the worst thing that's ever happened, and you are gonna get the ball back eventually. Mm-hmm. Does that come into play in kind of just your approach on the field?
Yes, sir. I'm a guy that's even keel. I don't get too high, I don't get too low. And in football, there's going to be mistakes, and you wish sometimes you don't make mistakes, but it's human nature. You're not going to be perfect in the football game. I mean, I wish I was. I wish that play didn't occur, because that was a crucial moment to where they ended up scoring off that turnover. But I just got back to the sideline and told the guys, like, hey, that's on me. Like, the ball got hit, and I'm sorry. Like, I can do a little bit better with my job. And they were like, it's fine. Like, you're our guy. Like, we're rallying behind you. And I told them, like, it's not going to happen again. And it was just me really zoning into, like, okay, my faith with Christ is the same faith my teammates have for me. And so as long as they have that, I have nothing to lose.
All right, what do you like to do outside of football? What if you're not in the playbook, if you're not getting ready, what kind of stuff are you doing?
So me and John Copenhaver, we're, like, tight, like, best buds on the field. What he's thinking, I'm thinking the same thing. So we play a lot of Call of Duty.
There we go.
Time and time again, get our minds off of football a little bit. And we'll also have conversations while we're playing Call of Duty about football, because football would never go away. But pretty much that. I'm a guy that's really loved nature. Grew up being outdoors, loved that. Love hanging out with my friends, love spending time with my family. Like, that's really like my safe place for me, and love going to church. Go to church as much as I can. Sometimes we'll have practice on Sundays where I miss, but all those things is what I really enjoy.
Okay, I got two unrelated questions for you. Number one, you don't have any tattoos that I can see.
No, sir, I do not.
Why is that?
My mom, she told me if I ever get a tattoo, is the day she'll be mad at me. So I won't get a tattoo for her.
Have you ever been close?
Never thought about it. Don't think I ever will.
Me either.
Yeah.
But that's mostly because I'm a chicken and I'm afraid of the needle.
Oh no,
and
sir.
I'm not cool enough, so there's two big strikes.
Oh no, I'm very scared of needles. My mom's a nurse, and if she's not giving me a shot, I'm sorry. It's gonna take a while.
Kobe is cool enough to get one at him.
Right,
you aren't. He is.
I got no doubt about that. And then the second thing, once football's over down the road, what do you want to do after that? You feel like somebody who's got a lot to give somehow.
Yes, sir. So for me, it's obviously I want football to work out, but if that's not what God has planned for me, then so with my whole life of being pretty much moved around, I want to help kids that are in foster care, kind of give them my story and tell them they can make it, because too many children don't really have that guidance of, okay, when something's bad, like, how do I overcome it? What do I need to do? And for me, I can use my experiences to try to help them, give them some faith. And I want to help out my hometown as well, have a business to where athletes can actually go to a sports complex and train. We have so much talent there, but we have to drive an hour and away just to go train somewhere. And so just somehow be a light for my hometown and also be a light for other children.
Some of this stuff isn't easy to talk about. Why is it important for you to share your story?
All my siblings have been through what I've been through, and mine wasn't as bad as my oldest brother. His name is Dre Greenlaw, plays for the 49ers. His story kind of lightened me up to where he gave me faith. I saw what he was able to do, and I saw how he went about it, and he never gave up. He never gave up on God. He never gave up on himself. And so for me, it's really not hard for me to talk about. I just want to be a light, and so many kids don't get a chance that are in foster care to actually get a voice and really shut down, and they just don't know what to do with their lives. And luckily I had God on my side to where he's been able to bless me, and I just want kids to realize they have something a lot greater for them as long as they lean on God.
All right, last thing, let's bring it back to football. 2 games left in the regular season for this team. What in your mind is important as you guys close out this regular season, try to keep this really high level of play going?
Yes, sir. Just basically take it one day at a time, I mean, even if you have a negative day, that's not the end of it, Think about the next play. Think about the next day. How can I improve? Obviously, the goal is to win out and then win the bowl game. And we're just going to take it one day at a time. We can't control the future, but we can control today.